Um, so the Jim Comey case has been thrown out by the court. Um, and it's been thrown out for reasons that are pretty bad for the Trump administration, which comes down to what the judge in this case seems to perceive as misconduct on behalf of the Department of Justice, like namely that the appointment of the prosecutor in this case, the U.S. attorney that Trump brought in, the lackey he brought in to do his dirty work, was improperly appointed. And from this, the judge has decided that the entire case has grown from the fruit of a poison tree, as it were, and has thrown the case out. I watched Comey's video that he put up. It's good. You should watch it. Yeah, I mean, I as I said yesterday, I think that this Trump administration is in a stage of collapse. Like I don't know what, like I don't know what more I want to say about this, in the sense that, you know, you guys can go and read the news and see what's happening. I'm trying to think about, like, sort of how to sort of think about, like, what's going to happen next, right? The really interesting question is if Trump ends up getting impeached and removed, which I don't know. I mean, could happen at this point, right? The Republicans could turn on him. They could just turn on him and just realize, like, this, like, we're all going to get wiped out if we don't turn on him, which creates a scenario where you're thinking about a JD Vance presidency in the near future, or something else. Yeah, I mean, I mean, it's hard to even think through the dynamics and, like, what I think the Democrats should do in that situation. I mean, I think for me, if you're asking my opinion, and I'll ask myself my opinion. Mike, what's your opinion? Hey, Mike, how you doing? My opinion on, like, what the Democrats should do is, well, I mean, I think they, I mean, I think they should impeach him for treason. Treason against the United States, given his, like, activities with, and in relation to, like, foreign powers, his dealings with the UAE, with Saudi Arabia, with Russia. I mean, I know that many on the right or center right people, never Trump conservatives, will immediately get to work on creating all the nuanced arguments as to, like, why that's stretching the definition of treason. One should note here that Congress gets to decide what treason means. The Constitution uses the word treason, but does not, but leaves it up to Congress in drafting, and we should be very clear about why the Democrats should insist on a treason charge, because this administration is so corrupt. And when Congress impeaches for treason specifically, there is a specific constitutional provision that says that means that the vice president and the entire cabinet gets impeached alongside him immediately. They're all removed from power, which makes the Speaker of the House president. That's what happens if you impeach a president for treason, which then sort of leads to a question of, like, who's going to be the Speaker of the House. Like, now that would mean Mike Johnson would become president. I mean, if I'm thinking about it, right, in terms of the best interests of the country, if I'm the Democratic leadership, and, they're very, I mean, I think Hakeem Jeffries and Schumer are incompetent on this, And so I don't have any faith that they would think about it in these terms. But if I was them, and we reached a moment where it seemed like enough Republicans were willing to join Democrats to impeach and remove Trump and the entire in the entire cabinet, including the vice president, from office, I would say that there needs to be a discussion about who becomes Speaker of the House, some kind of compromise candidate that both parties could maybe get behind, maybe like and like, I mean, obviously, I think the Republicans would insist that it be a Republican, but a Republican that would be acceptable to the Democrats, and perhaps like some kind of like unity candidate as Speaker of the House or something. I mean, that's like what you hope, like in a country that was actually trying to like pull itself back together and mend bridges, that you could actually have a discussion like that across lines. Um, I mean, if I'm thinking ahead and I was, you know, the thinking about political strategy, that's how I would think about it. I mean, I know this sounds like crazy right now. Like, how are you even talking about this? And obviously, this is hypothetical. We don't know what will happen. But if it were me, that's how I'd be thinking about it. One must one must think about these things in multidimensional terms. What would be the best interest of of the country in that case? Um, that's what I care about. I certainly, I mean, I want to be clear. Like, I don't really care about, like, I'm not the only tribe that like I'm like completely spiritually attached to is the tribe of the American people. And what I think is in their best interests. Not that, not that I'm an infallible guru and that I know what's best for everybody, because I don't. But I think that, I think that what is best for Americans is certainly to have a president of either party, who is not corrupt, respects the Constitution, uh, is uh, predisposed to being honest, and telling the truth about what they believe, um, and sort of follows the basic rules of integrity, which is to say what you mean and mean what you say. Um, to honor your like, that when you make a promise that you honor it, and that if you can't honor it because of exogenous circumstances, you explain very clearly why that's the case. And in that moment, recognize your fallibility and take a moment of humility. Not because like you've done anything wrong, but because the lesson must be learned by you and all of us collectively. Um, I think these are like things that should just apply. Like, I mean, all of these things should be um relatively non-controversial. Whatever you think about abortion rights or trans rights or tax levels or business regulation, like, I mean, we all have strong opinions on all these things, of course, but I mean, just like basic character issues that supervene on these political questions of distribution uh, and policy more generally. Like, I think this is reasonable, right? This is reasonable. Like, this is like this is sort of the baseline what we should ask of our leaders. I mean, that's my conception of what leadership should look like. I notice that this is not the conception of what many people think leadership should look like. I mean, we have Pete Hegseth, former Fox News host, um, the Secretary of War. Secretary of War. I mean, this is a man that wrote a book about what he sees as this sort of the emasculation of the U.S. armed forces, the sort of the weakening of the armed forces through sort of a through the intrusion of the high brow of the intellectual class into, you know, what should better be disposed to be a more sort of brutish view of what a standing military should stand for. He calls it the warrior ethos. Pete Hegseth views himself as sort of a prime specimen of sort of the, I guess in his world, the sort of ideal masculinity. I mean, and this masculinity is, and he says it in his book, right? Like, I mean, I read his book, you know, during the transition before Trump was sworn in, after he was nominated, and you know, he takes a you know, he basically just cuts down all these notions of international law and sort of international conventions on, you know, like, he basically thinks the Geneva Convention is stupid. That like raw power, you know, just unrestrained killing, you know, of the enemy, sort of like his like, I mean, we should think philosophically about what Pete Hegseth is saying here, right? Like, you know, we built a military. I mean, we built our modern military culture in many ways is a reflection of, you know, the sort of the great generals of the Second World War, in particular, Dwight Eisenhower really looms really large, right? In terms of like how we think about military culture. And I think Eisenhower is one of the top 5 greatest presidents of in American history. And you know, a deeply, in my view, moral man, that, you know, and he, you know, you know, he was not just a great general, right? I mean, he was the, you know, he led the Allies. He was the supreme commander of the Allied forces in the Second World War. He'd go on to become president in the post-war period, in the 1950s. You know, and his, you know, he famously is the man that gave us the warning about the military industrial complex. Eisenhower hated war. He hated war. You know, it was Eisenhower that changed sort of the culture, and why we have a Department of Defense, not a Department of War. Um, the man that successfully led the war in Europe, to its victory over the Nazis in 1945. Eisenhower, another like major figure of the time, right, is Douglas MacArthur. Um, Obviously a important figure in the Pacific Theater, right? The sort of the he sort of led the reconstruction of and democratization of Japan. Yeah, these were this is why, like, these men sort of exemplify what, like, historians and we often call the greatest generation. Um, these were men that, like, genuinely, like, saw war as, at best, sort of an existential necessity. That that war should ideally never be fought. That yes, like, you have to be ready to fight a war when someone like an Adolf Hitler shows up at your door, and you should be capable of winning it. But that, like, war isn't good. I mean, you shouldn't glorify violence, which is what Pete Hegseth says bullshit to. He says that that's, like, woke. That's, I mean, he, like, when Pete Hegseth, um, you know, is criticizing this sort of stance that, like, our military is defensive in posture, in its culture, that it is one that imbues sort of a sense of legality and legitimacy, which we'll get to this whole sort of thing around whether or not people in the military should obey illegal orders. I mean, if Eisenhower were alive today, he would have been he would have been one of the people to lend his voice to that video that Mark Kelly and other members of Congress put their voice to. Eisenhower would have been the first to say that any like sworn member of the U.S. Armed Forces has a duty to disobey an unconstitutional order. He would have said that, and he believed that, right? And this is obviously, like, in the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So, like, Pete Hegseth's book, where he calls for this sort of the return of the warrior ethos, this de-wokeification. He's not in conversation with, purple-haired girls in Portland, Oregon. He's in conversation with Dwight Eisenhower. the man that won World War II, and led our troops to victory over the fascists. The cultural principles of our military that he, almost more than any other person, imbued and spoke to so eloquently, because he was a great thinker and an orator as well. If you've ever, one of was one he gave maybe one of the most famous speeches of the Second World War, right? Up there with Winston Churchill, obviously, like, we shall never surrender, and FDR, his Day of Infamy speech, spoken before a joint session of Congress, the day after Pearl Harbor. I mean, I actually know my history, unlike Pete Hegseth. I mean, I'm just like, he clearly doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. But Eisenhower, wrote and gave he wrote two speeches for D-Day. Actually, the speech that that some of you may have been familiar with, right? Which was the D-Day invasion speech he gave. That was also written, and it was put on little pamphlets that were handed out to um, all the men that loaded onto the landing craft and boats, uh, you know, across the English, in England, across the English Channel, um, as they prepared to um, storm the beaches of Normandy, where seven German Panzer divisions were waiting for them, um, and 10,000 Americans, Canadians, Australians, and various other members of the Allied forces would fall in battle that day, to secure a beachhead at Normandy. Um, you know, he gave this is the sort of the Great Crusade speech, right? Um, I mean that's the sort of the cultural heart, right? That sort of beat at the center of our sort of military culture, like in the post-war period. And Pete Hegseth and these right-wing lunatics, like, view it as this effeminate nonsense, through the lens of, and yes, I'm going to say it, their toxic masculinity, because it is very toxic masculinity. Masculinity isn't toxic, but that conception of it is. Um, Dwight D. Eisenhower would agree too. I mean, Eisenhower, I think, was a masculine man. But I would think I speak for. I mean, who am I to speak for Eisenhower? I am going to speak for Eisenhower because I'm a scholar of the man, and I think I have a pretty good grip on how he thought about these things. So I will. You'll excuse me, the indulgence of maybe suggesting what I think. And there's an argument about this. I think, Hitchens may have argued that you should never do this, but I'm going to do it anyways. I'm going to think about how Eisenhower might respond to Hegseth and what he's doing with the great institution that he helped build, the U.S. Department of Defense, and Hegseth's uh, cultural conception of what masculinity is. I think Eisenhower would look at him and he would see a small man, a coward, uh, a cruel man, things that don't reflect any kind of virtuous conception of masculinity that Eisenhower would have recognized. Like, I do think strength is part of masculinity, but strength is not something you weaponize. It's something you use productively for the protection of yourself and others, particularly the weak, particularly the people who can't protect themselves. Not whereas I mean the way that the Hegseths of the world look at it is that being strong means you're better than the weak. That you should dominate them. That the fact that they wouldn't be able to win a fist fight with you after 7 beers behind the bar, is a sign that you should hold political dominion over them. that the strong should dominate the weak. That's how that's like Pete Hegseth's view of, and Fox News and many of these like mega influencer assholes. It's certainly the way in which uh you know, these like fucking masculine influencers view it. Someone says bully. Yeah, I mean, like this, that this is not what the what Dwight Eisenhower would have thought of as masculinity. He would have been like absolutely horrified. I'm horrified on his behalf from across the veil of time. Um, I mean, when you have young men today, like like looking up to sort of this like, people like this Tate motherfucker, um, and I mean this is bad, right? I mean this is it's a it's not it's not masculinity. It's it's nihilism. It's a sort of cartoonish bargain bin version of Nietzsche's will to power that, quite frankly, I mean, a lot of these people claim to like Nietzsche and think they understand him. I got to, guys, I've got to do like an hour live on Nietzsche because I mean the fascists believe that Nietzsche was a fascist, um, and they interpret his will to power as sort of a metaphysical justification um, uh, for sort of the virtue of the strong dominating the weak, and that and actually that was not what Nietzsche was saying. In fact, Nietzsche was sort of a radical individualist, and certainly did not mean that. Even though like you'll have people like Curtis Yarvin and Peter Thiel and these like uh modern like fascist morons who think that Nietzsche's philosophy provides justification for their cynical view of the world, which is that like power is unavoidable and democracy is just an illusion. So uh, we should dispense uh, with the pretext. That's their argument. And Nietzsche would not agree with them. It's like, I mean, he may not, I don't know that Nietzsche would agree with me either. I'm not, and I'm for various reasons that we could get into and could talk about that. But like, to the extent that these people like view Nietzsche as sort of one of their like philosophical heroes, and are sort of incapable of like recognizing like what Nietzsche was talking about when he talked about staring into the abyss and seeing the abyss stare back at you. I mean, Nietzsche was talking about the collapse of meaninglessness, the sort of the sort of the moment at which like life sort of collapses um into sort of like sort of complete like detachment from what makes one human. And he talks about, and in this he talks about the last man, and Nietzsche is describing these men actually. um he has this other concept, right? The Ubermensch and Overmen, and Thiel and Andreessen and Yarvin think they're that. Nietzsche would be very quick to see that they're in fact not that they're actually the last men. Um, yeah, I'll do a session on Nietzsche. I mean, I got to at some point. I mean, like somebody who actually knows the fuck they're talking about needs to do this. Um, so what else we got going on today? Do you guys? I mean, I don't. Do you guys like when I get into like the harder philosophy? Like, I don't know. Um, I mean, I just go in and out of it as I like talk. I have no idea what you guys like and what you want. I'm just basically doing whatever I want. Um, um, I mean, I will say that Mark Kelly, I think, definitely embodies the kind of ideal of like what military culture should be. Uh, I mean, I think Mark Kelly's, from what I can tell, is a really good man who loves this country, who is willing to die for this country. Um, um, and I think he still would. I don't think I don't know that I believe that Pete Hegseth or any of these people would die for this country. Um, I mean, the idea of dying for one's country, to say someone like these guys, like Peter Thiel, who is afraid of death. He wants to live forever. He wants to escape death. Um, I mean, I don't want to suggest that one should throw their life away. Um, if you think I'm saying that, you certainly misunderstand me. But I think having a meaningful life, an important part of meaning is recognizing that meaning is something that is bigger than you, right? Even the language we speak, right? I didn't invent any of the words I'm saying to you now. I learned them from other people, from conversations, from the pedagogy um, of those who taught me throughout life. That's the bigness, right? Of meaning, sort of showing its you know expansive extent, right? Like beyond the self. Like, does it matter to you that your children will live in a better world or a worse world than the one that you lived in, or future generations? I mean, if you believe that, then surely then one should be able to admit to oneself that there's things bigger than you. That there's even things that matter more than your own life. That a life without meaning is a life that wouldn't be worth living, which is what Nietzsche is getting at when he stares into the abyss. That's what he's getting at. Camus comes at it a little bit differently, right? In the myth of Sisyphus. The only serious question is like, why shouldn't you commit suicide? One must imagine Sisyphus happy. What's the answer to this question? The answer is that meaning exists. Love is possible. Um, that there are things worth fighting for, sacrificing for. Love is not possible without sacrifice. One must sacrifice to love. You must sacrifice your attention. To love someone is to give them your attention rather than someone else or yourself. This is why love exists in the tragic dimension. You can't escape it. So, someone who claims to love while showing no willingness to sacrifice doesn't know love at all. They might mistake love for indulgence, for self validation. That the people that they claim to love are just people who serve as convenient mirrors to the self that they want to see. So they surround themselves with sycophants. Certainly not people like me who might call them out on their bullshit because they're afraid of the truth and they don't know what love is. Yet Dwight Eisenhower would not think much of Pete Hegseth, to say the least. That's my take for today, for what it's worth. And as I often like to say, right, as I laid out for you what I think the true nature of love is, which is real. And in that recognition, release yourself to that, right? Release yourself to that notion that there's something bigger than you, and let love carry you home. Thank you everybody for joining me on this Monday. I'll see you again soon. And thank you. I want to, and I also I want to say that I'm starting these new office hours. I'm going to be doing Zoom sessions. I'm going to try to do them at least once a week. And you can join me and we can have discussions and we can ask questions and talk about things and you can have an opportunity to go deeper with me on some of these things, like one-on-one. That's going to be available to paying subscribers, which will give you access to the chat room, where we'll post the Zoom link in there. So I encourage all of you, if you'd like to join me for those. We're having the first one on Wednesday, and if you join me for that, I think that'll be fun. It'll be great. Thank you, everyone, and have a great week. I love you all, and I love this country, and I'm gonna keep on loving you all. I'm gonna keep on loving this country. Thanks.